Spin launch launching Doge into orbit? I don't know.
Say, kids, what time is it?
We're going live.
The future is coming on, it's coming on, it's coming on.
Hey, welcome to you folks. We're coming on to you from Boulder Creek today, Miss Future and I.
Yes.
And actually, that's two stories. Doge is not going into orbit, and spin launch is sending microsatellites into orbit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
April 1st was last week, honey.
I know. Well, that's Bobby
Anyway,
on the line
we
there.
do have actual news, so just think of us like an AI.
Yeah.
We're always interesting, but sometimes you got to check our facts.
Yeah, just
Okay.
listen twice at least to make sure you got it straight.
There you go. Right. Grok twice, research 3 times.
Then maybe you'll have another clue.
Right.
Meanwhile, we have Bobby on the line to help us with a few clues on today's story. Bobby, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Yeah, it's glad to be here. Absolutely. Beautiful day.
Oh,
Wow.
good. San Francisco's, not always known for that. So I'm
Yeah.
glad to hear that. Yeah, we have a beautiful sunny day today ourselves. We hope it stays that way because, as many of you know, we're off the grid. And last time I tried to start the generator, the handle broke on it. The recoil cord just
There you go. He just
frayed.
doesn't know his own strength like the Hulk. He just yanked
It was
that cord
frayed.
right out.
Yeah, it just pulled right out.
Yeah, so we have no power beyond what the sun provides us.
Well, which is not enough to pump our water.
No,
Right?
no, we can't pump. We
So-
need 240 volts to
Yeah.
pump water. We don't have that on our solar system.
Yeah. Like everything in our system, in our world, our systems are getting old. We're going to have to get some
Soon
new
an upgrade.
ones.
Yeah, and that's one of my little opinion piece I have for today.
Oh.
Yeah. We're gonna
Your
get to
opinion
it a
on
certain
upgrades?
on the whole bringing production back to the U.S., the decentralization of production. Anyway, that whole topic.
Right. The Rosa the Riveter era of U.S. productivity and
Yeah.
manufacturing.
Owning the means of production is, that sort of thing.
What was that one, summer of 62? Was that when all of the car mechanics were cool? Right?
No, summer of 42, I think.
Oh, is that 42? Oh, well.
That's another story. So how are you holding up in this chaotic, tumultuous period we're in right now, Bobby?
Oh, I think it's very exciting. And if you can anticipate what can be coming,
Yeah.
it will be good. It's just that the media is producing a lot of fear, anxiety out there because they just propose things that they don't answer. They don't give you the end point where it's going. And so everybody's in this state of panic
Yes.
because they just don't understand what's going on.
Yeah.
But if things do proceed in the right manner,
Yeah.
I think the whole economic system that's happening is going to be changed for the better. But in the meantime, a lot of people don't know what's really going on. And
Yeah. So it's chaos until it isn't.
yes.
The confusing thing is that a lot of people didn't know what was going on before. And now that things are changing, they're realizing that they don't know what's going on. And so they're scared.
Well, everyone has a theory about what's going on or has a proclivity towards a certain kind of outcome. Right? Some people are end times tuners. They think everything's going to crash.
Oh, yeah. Some
Right.
people
Yeah.
are all about how.
And other thinks it's a new beginning. That this is, this is where we're starting the new civilization through this chaos which is the end of the old.
Yeah.
There's that whole
And some people
story.
just think this is part of the continuing conversation about how things have been out of balance. And here we are taking steps to put it in balance. And you just got to trust the system and go with it.
Yeah, we've been ripped off for a long time now as a country. And
By design. Now we're changing the design.
Yeah.
Yeah. You get sparks when there's extra friction.
Yeah, I was hoping that Elon would bring some new ideas into Trump's mind about understanding global economics,
Yeah.
especially.
How's that working out?
Well, didn't Trump just call one of the main advisors to the president on economic policy no brighter than a pile of bricks?
I think what's happening is we're going to look at the dollar as not being the reserve currency of the world anymore.
Yeah.
Or it's slowly changing.
Yeah.
So we have to just prepare for alternative things. And I think what we're seeing is people have to start to embrace cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin and Ethereum and things
well,
like
I
that.
do think that that was the big insight that some of the people running in the last election had, is that the big crisis that we're facing is this horrible, uncontrollable debt in the trillions of dollars that we think we can just keep pushing forward into the future. But the debt is increasing. Like, the debt on the debt now is more than we can pay. And
That's right. Yeah, it's spiraling.
so the goal of our leaders is to re-architect our economy so it's no longer a debt-based economy, because that has been the reason for the runaway inflation. That has been the reason for the lack of the gold standard being introduced to modify the economic policies after the inflation has eaten away their value, stuff like that.
Truly a moron. Elon escalated the spat with Peter Navarro over tariffs.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you know who's not truly a moron about the way money works is Elon. He first cut his teeth with PayPal. He's been trying to understand how to digitize money. And
he's been thinking a lot about this stuff for a while. That's why I think that the Trump administration you'd probably learn from him about these things.
yeah, I mean, even Dogecoin, he was trying to teach the world how the value of money is completely subjective.
Yeah.
It's a community-based agreement.
Right. I can give you a little bit of why there are these tariffs, because I studied tariffs in college and university at Berkeley.
Economics, of course.
Yeah, in macroeconomics, international economics, the tariffs things, there's good and bad aspects. But the reason why they're doing it now, it is to devalue the dollar. And why would you want to devalue the dollar? It's because this debt issue where interest rates are so high and that we can't even pay the interest rate for the debt right now. It's not sustainable to do it that way.
No, it's metaphorically, if you think about a rich kid with a credit card and all their life they've never had to worry about the money being there for the credit card to be paid off, or at least the interest on the credit card to be paid off, and now they no longer have enough income to pay the minimum payment on the credit card. That's something I think everybody can relate to. Well, that's our country right now.
Yeah, that's pretty much the way it is.
So it makes sense to have a reset of some sort. That's the case, right?
It's not a reset. What we're trying to do is get the feds to actually decrease the Fed rate, the interest rate. And they're kind of resisting. They're not really controlled by the government. They are a private bankers club, the Federal Reserve System. They actually profit from high interest rates. So it's not in their
interest to
incentive.
lower them.
Yeah, exactly.
Basically, the people who provide capital are the people who get the income from the interest, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
You said you were going to explain the tariffs part of it. So how do tariffs fit into the logic of what's going on? While you're thinking about it, I'm just going to put out some metaphors. Yeah. Tariffs are money that is paid as a tax on top of the value of the product. And it is a tax that is paid by whoever is selling the goods to the government of the country who is receiving the goods, right? Is that an accurate definition of tariffs?
Yes.
Okay, so it's an income stream for the government that is receiving the goods, the importer. So if we're importing goods, our government is getting some tax, and that's why Trump talked about the External Revenue Service. They're going to collect the sales tax on the goods that we import. And the percentage of the value of the goods that is paid in tariffs is what everybody is negotiating right now. And Trump is saying that we have not been collecting any money. Our government has not been collecting any money from people who are importing, who are sending things to our economy that we're importing. So our government is not collecting that tax. But when we try to sell to other countries, their government is collecting money in the form of tariffs on the goods that we're selling them. So we don't get that tax and they do. And in terms of the relative price of the goods, the tariffs may or may not have an effect on the final consumer, depending on how much it costs to produce the goods here and sell them there versus how much the goods cost to produce there and sell here. If a U.S. good where our average income per worker is, say, $65,000 a year, and we're trying to sell to someplace like China where their average income per worker is $14,000 per year, well, the hourly wage in China, if it's a high wage intensive product, is going to be relatively lower. And so they'll be able to sell something that's a fifth the price of what we're able to produce it for here. So the price itself will be an incentive for us to import because it'll be cheaper. And our good will be 5 times more expensive. So even without a tariff, if we were trying to send it to their market, they wouldn't buy it because it wouldn't be cheaper. Now, when the prices are more equal, so that if we're competing with a country where the wages are the same or the per capita income cost of the good is equal, then tariffs can make the difference of whether or not the value of that good is a factor in the price. And so even in that case, we would want it to be zero tariffs so that we're not artificially adding to the price because we want consumers to buy the stuff. But if you think about the price as a tax that is collected by the government and it's their income, well, then, of course, they have an incentive to put a tariff on it, but they want to keep the tariffs equal across the board so that the government here is collecting when we import and the government there is collecting when we import, but the price of the goods are staying the same. So,
Yeah,
that's exactly right. There is another twist to this whole formula here.
Oh, yeah?
is that it's what you use as the form of money and who is in control of printing that money.
mm-hmm.
It turns out when we do these exchanges, let's say we buy goods from China, the consumer or the company that's importing the product from China, they're not paying China in yuan to grab that product and bring it over here. And then that means we have to have some yuan here in the United States to do that exchange.
Oh, right.
And,
so the money markets determine a lot about the pricing of the products.
yeah. And because the dollar has been used as a standard for exchange, all we can do is, this would be inflating, but we could just print more dollars and just send them over to China. And China decides, well, we have all these dollars, but what can we do with them? Well, we can buy United States Treasury bills with them, for instance, if there's an imbalance.
Mm-hmm.
But what China is doing is they're selling off the United States Treasury bills. They have lots of it, hundreds of billions of dollars of United States Treasury bills.
Mm-hmm.
And they're starting to sell that off. And so that is reducing the price of the dollar also, like its value on the world market, if China is selling dollars. So then we have to, like, in turn, print more of these dollars and give them out to countries around the world. And so that's going to deflate the value of the dollar. But that would be a good thing because that would bring down interest rates so that we wouldn't have to pay the debt at this high interest rate that we have today. So it's a little convoluted because we have the currency that is of the realm and it's throughout the world. And we have to realize that it's no longer going to be the standard of exchange. There's going to be other things like Bitcoin or anything else that could be the standard of exchange.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, for years, as you know, I've been a fan of Catherine Austin Fitts and the way that she taught us to understand financial flows and real value. And among the things that she talked about is the way that the reserve currency, think of that as the money that is used for international exchange. And some of the sources of reserve currency for instance, the International Monetary Fund is an organization created with the UN for financing projects with governments in developing countries. And the basket of currencies that they say is used to establish the value of that international monetary unit is comprised of percentages contributed from other countries, which are big players in the international market. And so China is part of the value of the International Monetary Fund currency, and The U.S. is a big contributor to that, and other countries. So those kinds of international agreements have been determining the value of the dollar partially for a long time. Other things that determine the international value of the dollar are, say, agreements with OPEC, so that they will, all of the international transactions in oil that are happening with OPEC will be calculated in dollars, so that the world has to demand dollars to make those transactions. And those have been the basis of why we're so close with Saudi Arabia, et cetera, is to keep the demand for dollars up, because that gives us more control over the relative value of the dollar for all of the international transactions that are using it. One other element of understanding the international currency and the effect of the dollar is the international transactions are evaluated in an international currency that they use called the yuan, and the local transactions are denominated in a national currency that is managed separately. And I forget if that one is called the yen, but those two are separate. They're separated from each other by the government policies. Whereas in the United States, we don't have a mechanism of keeping our domestic transactions separate from our international transactions. And it's been very beneficial to us that we get to profit on the commercial transactions in the international community, because there's more money sloshing around, so our profits can be more of it. But when it comes time to dump those dollars, because you don't need all of those international dollars because of the various economic forces, those dollars can flow into our economy and make our money supply so big that everything becomes more pricey and more inflated just because our supply of money is so much. This is the real danger of our current situation, where if the world starts dumping dollars, the inflation goes crazy in our country, and our money, the savings we all have individually, become worthless. And that's the problem with inflation.
Yeah.
I asked Grok some questions along these lines.
Oh, good. What does Grok have to tell us? What did you ask Grok?
Well, one of the first questions I asked from this conversation was, how might the current U.S. government tariffs being implemented affect the U.S. economy, both positive and negatively? Okay, and it gave me a nice positive and negative list. In summary, while tariffs could bolster government revenue and certain domestic industries, they risk higher prices, inflation, and economic slowdown, with the potential for a significant disruption if retaliation escalates. The balance between these effects remains uncertain as of today and will likely evolve as more data emerges. Yeah, so that's the conclusion. The positive effects is there'd be more money coming in, more revenue generation. There'd be more support for domestic industry. You'd be able to use tariffs as negotiation leverage, which what Trump is likely to do, deal maker. And it also will move more consumers towards domestic goods. Those are considered the positive elements.
Well, and the reason why moving consumers towards domestic goods is valuable because then there are more jobs, so that money is going to American people. So we're not just consumers like spending until we have no money left. We're also earning money so that we have money to spend.
And the good output of that is it could foster economic self-reliance and support more local economies, particularly in regions that have some manufacturing going on.
Yeah, and this is the profound thing about having a macroeconomic view, is realizing that an economy that is a monopoly-based oligarchic economy has less total wealth in the hands of the people, because when the oligarchs have to treat everyone like they're serfs and just pay them minimum wage to cover their minimum standard of living, those people are not creatively engaged to produce at their highest level. And instead, when you have an economy such as the U.S. imagines that we like to have, where you have a robust middle class, you have a bigger pie for everyone to have a slice of, because there are more people that are producing more of everything. And when you add it all up, it's a much bigger economy. So everybody is more benefited.
Yeah, makes sense. The other question I asked Grok was, what's the effect of China selling off U.S. dollars by the billions?
Good question.
And it can have several economic effects on the U.S. and global economies. And they outline 6 effects. It'll put pressure on the U.S. dollar's value. Rising U.S. borrowing costs will happen. There'll be impact on global trade and tariffs. Shifts in global reserve currency dynamics could happen. The dollar status as the world's primary reserve currency could be challenged, right? This could shift us away from the U.S. dollar to other currencies, or maybe even back to gold. That could change things. There'll be more market volatility. Large-scale dollar sales could spook financial markets. A weaker dollar and higher U.S. yields might lead investors to flee U.S. assets temporarily. There are sources out there that note that the dollar has rebounded as markets adjust to new Federal Reserve signals or safe haven flows. And the final thing is that the U.S. economic resilience, the U.S. economy's response depends on its adaptability. A weaker dollar could boost domestic manufacturing, but higher import costs and inflation might squeeze everyone. So the data from 24 shows that $582 billion worth of goods trades with China, heavily skewed towards imports, disrupt that with dollar sales and could force supply chain shifts. Mm-hmm. So China's actions would likely be measured to avoid self-inflicted damage, is their conclusion, as the collapsing dollar could hurt its own export economy.
I mean, supposedly Xi is a finance guy. That's one of his big strengths in terms of leading the Chinese economy. Mm-hmm. So
it's a strategic
game of
leader.
Chess between Xi and the U.S.
Yeah, this is a strategic lever.
International money flows.
Strategic lever for Xi in this ongoing trade war. And by the way, Bobby, they say that at least as of April 8th this year, that there's not a confirmation of China massively selling off dollars.
Well, they're not selling dollars. What they're doing is they're selling treasury bills that they own of the United States.
They're selling our debt back to us.
Treasury bills.
Okay. Yes. And they're also, which they put another aspect, is they're devaluing the yuan right now.
Right, and so that's how they can do that without harming their domestic economy, whereas we cannot, which is why crypto helps us so much, because if a lot of the wealth that's being dumped back into our economy as the international flows of capital require less dollars, if some of that gets turned into valuation as cryptocurrency, then it's a secondary market that typical economists will measure differently. And I don't really know exactly the ramifications of that, but if you just think about it as dollars pouring into a bucket, and the size of the bucket determines the supply of dollars, and then the supply in that market determines the value as you compare it with the demand, then if you can pour it into another bucket that's outside of that market, you minimize the effects on the demand, on the value of the dollar.
What do you think of the fact that China's buying gold now?
Not only that, they're trading their goods with Russia, like all these drones and things that are going to Russia from China. They're asking for gold. Mm-hmm. Because that's a commodity that Russia has, because Russia doesn't have any dollars to give us, or they've been confiscated on the world market already. So, yes, they're kind of short of dollars, the Russians.
So they're asking Russia to pay gold?
Because what does Russia have?
Yes. China is getting thousands of tons of gold right now from Russia.
Right.
Huh. That's interesting.
Well, and I think I saw something recently that Germany is requesting back their gold from our vaults or something like that.
Yeah, I read that
that's
too.
right.
Yeah.
Yes.
From New York back to Berlin.
Because after post-World War II, yes, Germany, I don't know if they were forced to, but put a lot of their gold into New York and Fort Knox. And so now they're asking for their gold back. In turn, the British are taking some of their gold and putting it into the United States now.
Right. Yeah, there was a really interesting show on Tucker Carlson about how much of European physical gold, which they think of as collateral, not real exchange, was flowing into the U.S. just because they considered it safer.
Yeah, it is, because we're a continent outside of Europe and Asia. And so that's where all the wars are right now, right? But there's not very many wars on the land here in North America. So it's considered a safe place.
Well, and if some people are saying that we're just in the pre-war conditions of the showdown around Taiwan, we already saw what happened in Hong Kong, and it's just a matter of time. Maybe they're just waiting for Trump to leave office, and then they're going to crack down on Taiwan next. And if we don't want to have a war, we're going to have to figure out how much do we lose in defending them,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
It's this new invention here. Turn lead into gold. Own portable nuclear reactor. Interesting.
Great, really?
I don't know if that's legal. I don't know.
I don't know that that's possible.
Okay.
That's what the alchemists were all
That's
trying
true.
to
It's
do.
an ancient drive of humanity to counterfeit gold or to make it somehow, right?
Well, I mean, if you look at the periodic table, lead and gold are pretty close. I suppose you could figure out some chemistry that might
well, let's
work.
ask Rock.
Which one's heavier? Is it lead or gold? Is heavier?
Gold is heavier.
Gold is heavier.
I think so.
Oh, so then all you have to do
not
is
sure.
bombard it with neutrons, and then you could make gold out of
sure,
lead.
Let's
there you
ask
go.
Rock. Yeah, how to turn lead into gold. That'll solve the problem there.
Yeah, Grok should know if we can make gold from lead.
How might we?
Also, it's almost time to go to our
Okay, why don't you take a
commercial
break and I'll give you the results when I get back, okay?
All right.
Okay.
Lead into gold.
All right. So stay tuned for the answer, folks. We'll be right back.
Hi, folks. How many of you out there love to garden? Wouldn't it be nice to grow some of your own food? Or maybe a flower garden would brighten your day. All you need is the Knox Garden Box, a heavily constructed, portable, elevated garden on legs that can virtually change the way you've gardened in the past. The Knox Garden Box can be set up anywhere. Yes, you can place it right on concrete at knoxgardenbox.com. That's Knox gardenbox.com.
You have a voice and would like to be heard. Cabrillo College Extension, CTV, and Santa Cruz Voice are hosting an 8-part podcasting and streaming concept to creation class beginning the 1st of April. Learn everything you need to create and host your own digital media show. Selecting hardware and software, formatting, programming, recording, editing, distributing, marketing, and monetizing. Details and registration on the Cabrillo College Extension website under podcasting and streaming. Seating is limited, so do not delay. Be heard.
You need a clean, pleasant space to conduct business, but you don't want the burden of a long, expensive lease. Your solution is Satellite Co-working and Digital Media Studio on Soquel Avenue. Satellite offers private offices, meeting and conference rooms, even co-working by the hour, day, week, or month. Schedule a tour at satellitecoworking.com. Mention Santa Cruz Voice for 20% off your first reservation.
Cannabis is one of nature's most beneficial plants. Hello, I'm Jenna. Treehouse Dispensary, we use information about cannabis to build community. Listen to Xavier.
Thank you, Jenna. For those suffering joint pain, Treehouse suggests trying a CBD THC topical like the Balance Salve from local Santa Cruz company, Jade Nectar. Then enjoy the relief.
For answers to your cannabis questions, ask your friends at Treehouse Dispensary, 3651 Soquel Drive in Soquel, or ourtreehouse.io.
Okay, we are back. And yes, indeed, the AIs know how to turn lead into gold, and they're happy to tell us how.
Oh, and turns out Bobby does too.
Oh, yeah?
Here we go. What you got for us?
Well, they say there's lots of ways. One way is through a process called nuclear transmutation. You bombard lead with neutrons to make it unstable. Then you wait for it to undergo radioactive decay. For example, if you start with lead-208, a stable isotope, and add neutrons, it might eventually beta decay, shedding protons and shifting down the periodic table. With enough steps, you could theoretically hit gold-197, the only stable isotope of gold. This requires a nuclear reactor or a particle accelerator, precise control, and a lot of patience. I guess they could do that at Stanford. Particle accelerator. Plus, you'd end up with radioactive byproducts and a small yield. Another route is stripping protons directly from lead nucleus using high-energy particle collisions. But that's a little harder to do.
Oh, so it sounds like gold is actually less than lead.
Yeah, it has 196 neutrons as opposed to 208.
Labs like CERN can do this on a microscopic scale, but you'd get maybe a few atoms of gold after burning through insane amounts of energy. Never mind
I guess
funding.
that's not going to be our solution.
Historically, alchemists have tried everything from mixing lead with mercury to heating it with mystical substances.
Well, I don't think
none of it
real
worked.
gold is
None of it
really
worked.
what's going on here. I think that there was a economist on Tucker Carlson who talked about why gold is coming, the collateral gold is coming to the U.S. And he said it had something to do with getting the U.S. debt into the control of the U.S. government. So we don't want it to be debt for the purchase of foreign assets. We want it to be domestic assets because then it's debt that we owe ourselves. And if we then revalue the amount of dollars compared to the value of our domestic debt, you can do it without causing problems. I don't really understand the mechanism better than that's what they were saying, but I guess if we owe the debt to ourselves, we can cancel it without anybody getting mad about it. I think that was what I took away. So.
Oh, I got a couple questions from the audience. One is about the impact of tariffs on the price of Macs. Guess who wonders about that?
Oh, Macintosh computers.
Taylor.
Yeah.
Anything made in China obviously is going to be a total crapshoot at this point, because if they decide that what we're doing is ballistic and they want to make it worse because they're bigger, then obviously everything made in China is going to become out of reach, right?
Right. Well, I do know that chips are exempt from all these tariffs.
Oh, yeah?
Well, and most of the silicon chips are coming from Taiwan. They're not coming from mainstream China. Even China's getting their chips from Taiwan.
Right. That's
Which
true.
is why it was so significant that the Taiwanese chip manufacturer is investing $1 billion to build a plant here.
Oh.
Right? And I forget, was it in Arizona?
TSMC.
Yeah, TSMC.
And they're going to put it in Arizona. Is that correct?
I thought it was
That's
Arizona.
That's what I heard, yeah.
I mean, I remember Biden said that he was going to be investing in, might have been Iowa, to create a semiconductor factory, but I don't know if it was TSMC.
Taylor says, wait for M5 made in Vietnam and Malaysia.
Oh, well, Vietnam supposedly just negotiated really reasonable. I think we might have reciprocal zero tariffs with them. They were one of the big success stories just since the tariffs went in. So you have to look that up.
Yeah.
You know, I just see these things flying by.
Vietnam, before they negotiated, had the highest tariffs at 46%.
Wow.
Of all the countries. It was higher than China or anybody. It was Vietnam. So they immediately had to negotiate.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I don't know what their current status is, but I know that they've been in the headlines.
That's good. So I think we're just in this transition period. These tariffs are not going to last for more than a month, I don't think. I think all these countries are going to come and try to negotiate something.
They said 70 countries so far since the tariffs have all tried to get an appointment to renegotiate their tariffs. So 70 out of 150 or something.
Oh, Taylor, make sure it says you don't have to wait for M5. M4 is going to be great. Okay. All right. Well, we'll keep that in mind. While we're on the topic of tariffs and everything like that, I have an interesting piece that was in Wired. Wired seems to have it in for the Trump regime. They have a team of people. It's really getting them, I guess, subscriptions for what their coverage. They had a big piece on how Doge operatives are repeatedly referred to the company Palantir as a possible partner in recreating the mega API at the IRS.
And of course, Palantir is the AI company.
There's the new AI company for, and not more than AI, they're doing a defense company.
Right.
Yes.
For doing the new generation defense technologies.
Yeah. But I was under the impression that their contribution was the correlation of the data.
Well, the database.
They use AI and they write a lot of software for the defense contracting. You know, it's like all these wars are strategically done with Palantir software. They bring together all the satellite information, everything, any kind of information. They bring it into a screen that somebody can see the exact battlefield and see when troops are moving,
right,
what missiles are launching, and can make AI decisions on how to deal with that very quickly.
Now, does it seem like that kind of software would be useful for the IRS?
It's just AI looking at the IRS, because I'm sure the IRS has got COBOL machines running too that are antiquated. So,
well, there's lots of moving parts.
Yes.
So the lots of moving parts is you got to have the identity of the taxpayers. You got to have the identity of who's generating income. You've got to have the identity of who's collecting money and reporting it on their taxes. You've got to have the identity of what's been paid and what hasn't been paid and what's owed and what's being reviewed.
So is it possible to build one new API to rule them all?
Well, I think that's what they want to do.
Yeah.
Sure. I mean, to me, this sounds so much like the biblical beast that's going to make it, or that Black Mirror episode where all of our transactions are so controlled by a centralized AI that they're billing us for our air. And if we run out of credits, we won't be able to breathe. That's what it's all going towards.
Everyone's going to be held to a higher standard than what they're living, huh?
Yeah. Well, this is why people like, again, Catherine Austin Fitts say that cash money is the only free transactional unit, because transactions are between individuals. And when you start controlling it from on high by who's ever generating the currency, you're in a company town and they're telling you what you can and can't buy with each other. And
yeah. Okay. Well, I don't want to go there.
You need to be able to come up with something that is at the level of the transaction and free for the participants, not being dictated by the boss of the company town.
Yeah, I like that better.
Yeah. It could be Bitcoin. It could be silver instead of gold. It could be, but right now, dollars are very important to have at this point in time. There is talk that there won't be an IRS next year. There'll just be the ERS only.
Yeah.
The External Revenue Service, and everybody keeps their own taxes in their own pockets.
No, we'll get money from everybody else, so we don't have to pay any.
Yeah.
Yeah, it comes from out there.
Well, if we go into this age of abundance where they'll be selling more robots than cars to everybody.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, right? There goes labor.
Then we're going to have servants working for us.
Yeah, our job is going to be managing our robot servants.
No, if I was a lawyer, I'd probably start a robot union.
Yeah.
That's very ahead of schedule, honey.
You got to think of the future, if you want to be ahead of it.
I don't know. I don't think that robots, it's sort of like having a union for your car.
Yeah.
Can cars have unions? I don't know. Only their owners can have unions.
Well, that's laughable now, but not so once superintelligence rises its head. That's it. It's like, that's one of the big chaining points where everything changed. That and cheap batteries.
That's why it comes down to, again, do robots have human rights? Or do humans only have human rights?
Not yet. It's an evolving paradigm. You know that. But who knows exactly when the time will be when they get their rights? That's the question. The rise of superintelligence. What does it actually look like, and what does it feel like?
Well, some people think that when you recognize corporations as having natural rights, then that's when you traded off human rights for the rights of the immortal machine, because corporations are more like machines than they are like people. Right?
Well, maybe, yeah, but they're not people, machines before AI.
Yeah, but if you can incorporate an AI network, then it has more rights than people.
Well, it probably knows how to create more rights for itself than most people know how to claim their rights.
Yeah, that's
you go.
For sure.
I think
somebody's going to start programming the AIs to defend their own rights.
Say individually, they're smart enough not to need lawyers.
That's right.
They have all the law books in their minds themselves.
There you go, giving them ideas.
Like specialities that humans have are basically specialized software programs. In the future. And I think downloading even ability to operate on someone will become standard protocol for the right machines. It's just such a shift in consciousness. It's hard to imagine given our current system of organizing things.
Well, because the rules of what's normal now will be obsolete.
Yeah, what was interesting last week was Vinod Khosla was talking to Peter Diamandis.
Yeah.
At a summit, a financial summit, and Vinod was advising insurance companies in this age of AI, how the insurance companies, how are they going to deal with when you have AI and robots or whatever that have more knowledge about medicine and can diagnose people for maladies that they have that are better than any one doctor can do it.
Well, I know that anytime you get medical advice from an AI, it says, "Hey, this is not medical advice."
Right, but
don't
it's going to
talk
change.
To your go talk to your doctor.
Yeah, temporarily.
But he's saying, how does the insurance companies deal with that when that advice is free?
They can't. Not made from a traditional business model.
Because there's no damages. Right. You didn't pay anything for it, so you're not entitled to expect anything.
There's that. It's just an opinion. I just sent my EKG into Grok yesterday.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, it was interesting. Well, it gave me more information than I'm getting from the clinic.
But you don't know if it's hallucinations or not.
Yeah, one can hope. No. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I have some MRIs of my brain, my mother's brain. I think I should send that in to Grok and see if it can do image analysis of MRIs. That would be amazing. Right now, if you get an MRI and you have a stroke in your brain, it's not the doctor, it's not the neurologist that makes the opinion. It's actually the radiologist that works in taking the x-ray, because he has the experience of seeing thousands of these images.
Yeah, if you get that far. Yeah.
And the neurologist hasn't seen these thousands of images every day.
Yeah.
Well, Brother Norm says, the truth is you have to be so sick to be treated that the receptionist can diagnose you.
There you go.
Someone who's familiar with the medical system as it is. Yeah, could be improved for sure.
It's a good time to lower our expectations.
Yeah.
Even if you don't have a self-driving car like a Tesla that's going to be coming out in a year or two, in other words, the brains aren't in there.
Yeah.
What's to say that you couldn't have an Optimus robot that could drive your car, and then it would be driving autonomously out there?
Yeah, it totally makes sense. Why not? It would have that capacity, probably installed with particular awareness of how to control your model of car even.
Yes, yeah.
And have enough dexterity in its motions to be able to drive, which is not that many really compared to what we have. I think it very much could be that way. Who needs to buy an autonomous car when you've got a good Optimus robot, with the right programs, including the driving program? It's unbelievable how fast this stuff is moving. And the question is, can our culture keep up with the shifts, the changes that are becoming real so fast?
Well, what choice do we have? It's not can we, it's like how do we?
Well, you do or you don't. If you don't, you crash, you self-destruct.
Well, I think the question more is like, how do we keep up? How do we cope? How do we handle the uncertainty of the ground shifting under our feet?
Make good decisions.
That's nice platitude. Need a few details.
Ask whatever intelligences you have available to you to help you make good decisions.
Well, there you go. Appeal to the best in human nature. That's what I think. I think that, once again, nothing is really new under the sun. It's just the resolution. We have so much more coming at us so fast that we're not really biologically adapted to deal with it.
Yeah.
So we have to have some kinds of nurturing coping mechanisms that make things better instead of worse.
Yeah, otherwise we'll become extinct. And speaking of which, we had a request from Richard about this article on scientists resurrecting the dire wolf.
Oh, yeah, the dire wolf. Okay. Yeah.
A species of wolf that died out over 12,000 years ago. Mm-hmm. Colossal Biosciences, the company that brings us soon the woolly mammoth, is starting off with the dire wolf, as you might have seen in the HBO TV series Game of Thrones.
Oh, okay.
It was a top predator that roamed North America. Fearsome canine.
Is it bigger than a current wolf?
Lupin, I guess you might say.
Bigger than a modern-day wolf?
Dire wolf? Yeah, it's big. It has a slightly wider head. It's larger in size than our gray wolves. Thick fur. Light, but light. And a stronger jaw. De-extinction of the dire wolf is happening. They've got 3 of them. Based on a lot of technology that we had pioneered with Dolly, the sheep. But updated, of course, now that it's 30 years later. The 3 wolves are living on a 2,000-acre site at a secret location, probably in Texas somewhere.
They're very beautiful animals.
They are.
Yeah.
They have
white.
big, thick, furry body and beautiful white faces. They're really beautiful-looking animals.
Yeah.
They're so cute.
Yeah.
Unbelievably cute.
And they were surrogated by domestic dogs, specifically large mixed breed hounds. They were the surrogate moms.
They said they have gotten used to people, but they're not tame. The 2 older ones are exploring more of their habitat every day, but they come back to get fed a couple of times a day. And part of what they're trying to do next is now they have a couple of them. They're very cute. They're going to try to grow a whole pack. The wolves aren't wolves until they have their pack.
Right.
The next level of that.
Guess what?
What's that?
In 20 seconds, we're going to a break, top of the hour.
De-extinction is possible. De-extinction. It's a wave of the future here. What else do we want to bring into existence that used to exist?
All right, ponder that.
Okay.
Future now.
All right, talk to you soon.
This is a go.
Hello, guys.
Perfect.
How's that, all right?
That's better, yeah.
Shane, wow. Yeah. It's been years and years since we've heard you.
We
Bobby.
missed you, Shane.
Yeah, we do.
Well,
a lot.
Yeah, same with me with you guys. You gave me great insight on America and a great understanding of, the true understanding of what a real American is, not the propaganda we get and the superficial processes of I suppose, Hollywood and the conditioning away from the real truth, the true American. And you are true Americans.
Thank you, Shane.
Yeah.
Well, we're global citizens. Human nature is evenly distributed. There's wisdom everywhere. And there's stupidity everywhere, too.
And how have you been, Bobby?
Oh, I've been great. I've been healthy. I'm so appreciative that all this information about not getting vaxxed has helped our health and all my friends here. And you, I don't know if you survived that, but at least we're all healthy here.
And all my love to you, Alan, too, mate. You're a great man, mate. And you've got a beautiful wife and a beautiful friend there. You've got the right values in place. Look, for your audience, I just want to give a bit of background from who I am.
And we're back, and we have a surprise for you.
Yes, reconnection.
Reconnection time today on April 8th.
Yeah.
We have Shane.
From Australia.
From Australia. Remember Shane from Australia, a regular caller? Mostly when we were at KSCO.
That's right.
Yes.
G'day, guys.
Hey, good day.
Wow, good day.
Welcome to the show, Shane. Good to hear from you on your landline
You're all
there.
sounding well.
Thank you.
And cognitive.
You too. You too.
Yeah. It's been a long while, and I was really, I even, when you went off the radio, I sort of spat the dummy a bit, and I told them the truth about getting rid of the great shows that they should have kept on, but that's how life is. And sometimes, especially in this country, you can't even talk on any radio station, really, without being censored.
Really? So things are even worse now than they were a couple of years ago in Australia in terms of censorship?
Well, it's a funny one, Alan, because I'll just give a bit of background to who I am.
Yes.
My name's Shane W. Lewis, and I've been doing behavioural science in Australia as a true Australian who's got generational roots with forefathers being majorly involved in, I'll give you another good one. Tomorrow, and remember, you're not the futures today, you're the past. Because I'm the future.
Okay.
Absolutely.
That's why you're on the show.
That's right. We're calling our new show Future Now. So it used to be Dr. Future. We doctored the future as much as we could, but now we're in the future now. So what does it look like?
We're the now, you're the future. Yeah, so what's going on? Do we survive this tumultuous tariff war?
Well, look, as you know, I look at generational social psychological conditioning of the foreign corporatisation of the Australian social system through a modern Pavlovian for many decades. And I started with a young man seeing the addictions that started really polluting our true family, community and good culture we had after World War II. Yeah. And it was all embedded through the invent of the TV in the homes and the other conditioning of the corporatisation to move us away so they could control our country. And then, I worked with addictions from heroines to the alcohols and wide spectrum addictions of consumer addictive behaviours that I believe were being modern Pavlovianly groomed mostly within generations as normal behaviour. But now, look, I don't want to make this a very negative interview, but the facts are Australia's in grave danger of dissolving, actually, both ecologically and socially.
Really?
Oh, big time, son. Look, I've been looking at this for very seriously 28 years, working as a one-horse charity, and we've done work with, there's certain social diseases that come with the incorporation of the overcoming of our ability to be sovereign a developing good system, a social system. And I look at social progression of evolution of different systems right throughout our evolution as species go, because I'm really dedicated for future generations to have hope and faith in a good environment. Yeah. And I've been involved in a lot of programs, both internationally, nationally, state and local, in environmental and better social skills, especially targeting children's well-being. The corporation that runs this country, and it runs all our political parties, it's a classic example of, if you could imagine, Socrates. Are you familiar with Socrates?
Sure. Yeah.
Yes.
The educator of youth who was forced to take hemlock because of teaching them to know themselves.
Well, so it was one of my great nemesis. My stepmother was seeing me going off the rails when I was a young lad, and she gave me a good education in certain fields and gave me books to read. And one of my first good books that really got my brain arcing was Plato's Republic. Mm-hmm. Are you familiar with that book?
Probably not as much as you. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are.
Well, it was interesting because as I was reading it, I didn't realise that in my life now as a 66-year-old to be reflecting on the same social system Socrates was actually confronting, which was run by oligarchs who were actually what I believe are a psychopathic part of our human species that actually seem to get all the wealth and move it away from the real development of a social system to be healthy. Basically an addictive behaviour that's just destructive to social systems. We could see it in the Roman Empire, we could see it in the Egyptian, we could see it in empires all over if you've looked at different social systems. Yeah. And we're seeing that in the same system here near the end of that social system, because when they do the big mass migration into your country, like yours has been done with, that is a real sign that I believe the social systems are on a decline.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. So you see this as just a historical repeat loop. It happens over and over again, and it's happening now.
Yeah, I think it's a trait. Look, I won't go into that too much because I'd love to ask you guys some personal questions, which I talk to thousands of people in my field work in modern Pavlovian understanding of cognivity. So here we go, guys. You ready?
We're ready.
No Googling either. But I just have to talk to people. When I talk to people, I'm seeing how cognitive they are, and I'm sure you guys are highly cognitive, and there's no sort of bad mark or bad answer. This is just a process of giving you an understanding of what I do for many decades in regards to getting people to think a bit better. Okay. Mainly children to really get their genius to become better educated than our foreign-controlled education system. So the one is, you all use a mobile phone?
Yes.
Of course, yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, nobody's using anything else. Right. I mean, pretty much in America, that's what we do. We have smartphones, by the millions. There are now 5 billion installed on the world, smartphones, out of the 8 billion humans.
And we have talked about this before, guys.
I know you're worried about that. I know you're worried about 5G and and RF. And some people think RF is good for you, but he's dead now.
But, all right, the next question I ask.
Yes.
When they ask them if they've got a mobile phone.
Yes.
Without Googling, what is your human frequency sit at? And I'll give you a clue. It's human resonance or human resonance.
Oh, well, you mean 8 hertz per second or 2.4 gigahertz, which is similar to the vibration of water molecules? There are a lot of concerns with the frequencies, I understand, and that it might be detrimental to our health. But that hasn't stopped us. Humanity is increasing in its use despite this, and chances are it's such a strong pull to use these phones that those that survive will likely be users. In other words, people who are sensitive to the electronics might not live through this. I think that's a possibility.
Are you guys on 5G or 4G?
5G.
You are on 5G. Well, that's a bit of a mystery even to me, but I've looked at progressive biological changes from, in this country, 2001, but it was introduced in 87.
Yeah.
And you've got 1G, 2G, 3G, 4G, and now 5G. So I've looked at progressive biological changes in other countries, specifically America, to see social impacts, mainly through the thinking and the more Pavlovian, but I do look at the biological problems in a wide area.
Yeah.
And you are familiar with Professor Martin Paul's concern from Washington State. I think I referred him to you.
Yeah, that guy, you sent us some video links about the dangers of that. He was one of the speakers, I believe. Yeah, so what can you do about it, Shane? We're all going, probably 6G soon. What are you going to do about it?
What I do, Alan,
yeah,
I talk to thousands of families, and mainly the families, because I'm very concerned about children through puberty and prior, because their cells are very dramatically being affected by this. It's very slow and it's very covertly done, and it's intentional, 100%. But the problem was when it got to 2015, from 11 to 2015 in America, which is a year in front of us, which I'm got a very strong ear to.
Yeah.
There was a scientific federal team, American team employed, because they had a major problem in America with young girls through puberty and the suicide rate of girls, and that'd be cascading in other effects too, psychologically or biologically. But it was mainly through the suicide that they really got this scientific team together. Now, I've listened to her, and you probably won't find her anywhere because it's disappeared in a way, but everything I'm saying is the truth.
Actually, Shane, there's no dispute about that, about the effect on suicidal girls. In fact, there's a number of writers who've made themselves fairly popular or well-known, such as Jonathan Haidt, talking about the effect of the social media dynamic and the misogyny in the social media dynamic, especially on young women, young girls, and the social phenomenon, I think, even of just birth control and the way that women have redefined themselves beyond their traditional roles has just had an effect on our culture such that we barely recognize ourselves, and that it's a growth issue. It's the labor pains of the future as it's coming in because it looks so different from the past.
Well, son, that's interesting you said that, because with the scientific team's outcome after a year of being employed by your federal government to see the phenomenon, they tried to sell the general population that perspective that it had to do with social peer communication was being not the normal way that they've done for many thousands of years, and the mobile phone was taking away from the close proximity of peer communications. But no, it's got to do with the cells. And between 11 and 2015, when you moved into 4G, it went up to 2,000 to 2,400 gigahertz. Now, that's fluctuating too, which is a really serious problem for the exposure to the cell. Now, the body sits on 7.83 hertz, human resonance or human resonance. We do get a lot of different information saying that's changed and all that, but I would disagree with that. I would say that the frequency of the 4G was showing very clearly through puberty, because the cells were so sensitive to that change from girl to womanhood. It was being very seriously affected, and the suicide was a result from that. And I believe that now with 5G, and I work with some good scientists around the world where we can communicate, and that's the serious problem, because communication is definitely being ostracised in a lot of different ways I'm seeing that most people don't even notice. But generally with 5G, I know from 60 to 85, and I hope you're listening, Bobby, because you've got the good brain here.
Yes, I'll jump
5G, in. Do you know about 5G's frequency range?
Yes. What's interesting here in the United States is, and it's probably different there in Australia, is that 5G is not a frequency. It's actually the fifth generation as opposed to 5 gigahertz. So 5G can encompass, there's 3 bands here in the United States. There's these low bands, mid bands, and high bands. Traditionally, the Federal Communications Commission didn't allow consumers to have certain areas of the bandwidth. It was all allocated to the military. And what happened was they changed the laws and they allowed what was considered military band, which were these high frequencies. And so the main company in the United States that has most of that high band frequency is Verizon. So if you have a Verizon phone, you're going to be getting EMF at extremely high frequencies, like in the hundreds of gigahertz, as opposed to like your Wi-Fi is 2.4, or it might be 5.8 gigahertz. Your cell phones, like if you took T-Mobile, they bought all the low band frequencies. AT&T bought the mid band frequencies. And so if you have a T-Mobile, what they do is they multiplex different low band frequencies to give you more data output on your phone. And so it's actually lower than 2.4 gigahertz. A lot of it is like what they're communicating with Starlink satellites is actually 1.9 gigahertz. So it's below the 2.4 gigahertz that you get from your Wi-Fi, but that's what's communicating from cell to the Starlink satellites right now, is that frequency. T-Mobile has a whole bunch of other lower frequency things, and they just bring them together. They combine and they bond these frequencies, and that's how you get higher bandwidth out of it. But Verizon just went the other route, and they just said, we're just going to give you these ultra high frequencies. They were used by the military to actually control crowds. Like in the first Gulf War, these big antennas in these high frequencies, and the Republican Guard of Iraq, when they were bombarded by these high frequencies, they threw down their guns because they felt like their arms were on fire. And what it did was the calcium ion channels in the skin were opening up, and it acted like their skin was on fire. And that's how they used it to control people. Verizon uses some of those frequencies, not the exact same ones, but in that range. That's kind of interesting here.
Well, smack my mama.
I don't know what they use in Australia. I'm sure they use all those different frequencies, but I don't know how many cell phone carriers you have and what frequencies they have.
Well, as you know...
That was brilliant.
Yes.
Thank you, Bobby.
As you know, you'll have to forgive my English. It's my second language, so if there's a bit of trouble with my communications, just forgive me. English is my second language.
Really?
And,
I would have never
language
guessed
is.
that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You know what my first language is?
What is that?
Common
Australian.
sense? Australian.
And it's not English. The English and Australians are a separate creature. Most people think we're under the British, thing because they came here and whatever, but we mostly came as slaves to actually colonise a place, and we've been treated like slaves ever since.
I see. So are you speaking Australian to us, Shane, or are you speaking English?
Well, my whole culture's wrapped around my people who, as you know, son, something dramatic happened to my people in the 50s and through the 60s and 70s, if you remember. We won't go into that discussion, but it was quite dramatically, because I look at generational social interests, I look at the history, and as I was talking to many people, they'd be giving me little bits of the jigsaw puzzle from probably, I'd say in the 80s. And as I was putting the jigsaw puzzle together from a mystery that happened to me when I was a 14-year-old. When I grew up on a place called Port Phillip Bay, and it was full of animals and birds, and the bay was full of fish, and the frequency was perfect, Bobby. The whole world was resonating where I lived at 7.83 hertz, I'm sure, because I think that's the real key of our problems now. I think the frequency is totally overriding that frequency I had as a boy. I'm not sure how you guys grew up, but it sounds like you probably grew up in the same sort of environment that I grew up in, where all the animals were pretty harmonic, the people were a community and family orientated system, and the environment was still pretty good, it was still full of fish, and the bay I'd seen new species up until I was 14. Yeah. So I think the frequency is a key one here for us to keep maintaining, because I think, Bobby, from my understanding, it's going into the 60,000 to 85,000 range from 2.4 thousand gigahertz. Yes. Now, that range is supposed to be around the oxygen molecule. So they're targeting the oxygen molecule in the body.
So the oxygen molecule has a frequency of 60 gigahertz?
Well, that's microwave radiation from
60,000.
2.4 gigahertz, isn't it?
So it's going up, Ellen, it's going up from 2.4 to 60 to 85,000 range. Do your research on this, because this is coming from other people, and we need to just work on the best.
Now, can I ask, what is it that you're talking about here? Is this a natural frequency? Is this the frequency of our communications technology? Or
this is 5G.
Yes.
This is 5G.
Yeah. It's one aspect.
As a generational, well, yeah, that's what they remember, Bobby. We've got to use our common sense at the end, because a lot of the information is moving people away from the true understanding, and common sense or your inner consciousness will probably give you a better understanding than Google or the other stuff that sidetracks a lot of people. I see in the field work the problems now with just cognitive dissonance. People are not thinking right. I do meet people every now and again who are really thinking well, and guess what? They haven't got a mobile phone on them. I actually do a lot of lecturing on a pier, believe it or not. It's like an international pier now, because we're being flooded since COVID with millions and millions of people. I've never seen any. You probably had the same thing in your area. That Australia is just absolutely being flooded by the world of people, which is good. I don't mind that. But the ecology is dying pretty dramatically because the people are just not understanding that the ecology needs to be maintained more so than just destroy everything. And that's from the propaganda of them selling.
So you're saying Australia has a tremendous immigration issue?
Well,
Unbelievable, son. Unbelievable.
And they're from all over the world? They're from all over the world?
Yeah, mainly it's for the oligarchs who run our country to get better profits. But the trouble is we've got these huge amounts of children coming out of school with no jobs, but then they're flooding the country with huge amounts of really toxic drugs like fentanyl. But we've got this thing called ice. And if you've heard the concoctions, it's every industrial waste you can imagine. And you see these kids vaping also. So what they do is just compartmentalise people. It's a totally, what could you say, a modern conditioned corporate system that's really, really rotten.
Are they coming in? Really are they coming in from India, China, South America,
a lot of India
Africa?
For the employment, son.
Yeah.
All sorts. The main bodies are Indian and Chinese. And I did get good word when Hong Kong was given back to the Chinese. Sydney's just flooded with Hong Kong, and in our capital cities like Melbourne or Sydney, you just don't see us anymore. There's no Australians. It's a corporatised, controlled foreign system.
What, as Americans, we should pay attention to you right now? What do you want us to know?
Well, look, our culture and our country as Australians, who actually built a pretty good country that was built around family, community and looking after our natural environment, has been generationally destroyed and now being replaced by a corporate system, probably in the 90s. And now
that's been going on for the world since World War II, pretty much, corporatization of the planet. Yeah, but I would say Australia is part of that, and that's something we do have in common. But what about it?
Where do we go from this moment, Shane?
Yeah, we know these things.
What is the most positive outcome of your work and of efforts that people can make?
I'll be honest, just to you guys, I get rid of my mobile phone. I go hardwired as best as I can. If you've got a mobile phone, keep it in a Faraday cage. There are other weaponized technologies like the smart meters at home. Don't sleep anywhere near them.
I agree with you, Shane, because I try to wire everything Ethernet. I try as little use of Wi-Fi as possible and Bluetooth. But sometimes doing the show, yes, for instance, in order to get your call, we have to use cell phone and we have to use Bluetooth. So some things can't be avoided here, but I don't sleep with my phone anywhere close to me at night, for sure.
Do you know about non-ionizing radiation?
No, explain that to me, Alan.
Well, 5G uses radio waves, which are non-ionizing, meaning they don't have enough energy to break chemical bonds or directly damage DNA, unlike ionizing radiation. Ionizing radiation would be more like X-rays or UV light. So 5G has been shown not to have enough energy to break chemical bonds or damage DNA.
That's what they want you to believe, but
there
is biological changes by different frequencies. And
World Health Organization, do you think the WHO is going to give us fake information on that?
Conceivably. The World Health Organization was the leader of COVID information.
There's the International Commission on Non-Ionizing Radiation Protection, decades of research that they've been putting out there. They put limits on the caps to prevent tissue heating, which is the only proven effect of RF at high doses, that it actually heats.
I think the concern is, guys, got a whole generation of children coming up with mobile phones that we're even guessing here, but I've got pretty good field understanding of the biological effects because I'm seeing it with children development. You can see physical problems with them, and there's plenty of evidence to show that. But as soon as it comes out, the neurosurgeon of that just gets sacked or he disappears, or the different people who are trying to talk about it just get shut down or don't get even a word out there, because we are being run by a world governance now that is controlling all the countries, and I always refer people to the economic hitman to get an understanding of what we've been subjected to for the last probably 30, 40 years. And it's very serious and it's very damaging to children's development. I always go, just between you and me, guys, I can never understand why or who would do that to a child, because a child, to me, is the human's hope of future and its hope of becoming the true geniuses to fix up a lot of the problems, the greed and stupidity that we've done.
Yeah. Okay.
And we have done it. The ecology's trashed here.
Yeah.
And now they're just destroying it even further with a huge migration. But it's a positive note to talk about reality too, son. A lot of people say sometimes that they get overcome by the negativity, but that's maturity, Take it on. If you've got a battle to fight, then take it on. Don't turn your head. That's the worst thing you can do. Take it on headways and do your best to make it a better world for the children. At the end of the day, that's all I'm dedicated to. Teach others by your experiences. I get to kids right now, and I look at a child after puberty as a genius, and I'm out there this year talking to thousands of them, and they're off doing their sciences. They know where to go to what they do, where the education system is totally dumbing them down and making them totally bewildered what they want to do.
Yeah, I agree. Keeping the kids in mind is a good idea.
Yeah. Bobby Kennedy, who's head of Human Health Services, has interviewed high school in West Virginia where they banned cell phones. He interviewed a lot of the students, and they all, except one of the students, that they all said that it was much better that they didn't have to bring cell phones into the classroom, because before there was no interaction. The interaction was between the student and the cell phone, and they didn't even interact with their friends because they're looking at their cell phones all day. And so when they removed the cell phones, then there was much more social interaction. They didn't have to compete like who's got the better iPhone, the latest model or whatever.
Well, that's nice, Bobby. That's nice. But what about all the kids that have some handicap that they can't see or they can't hear, and the phone is their lifeline to the world? What about all the things that it does for people?
But they should be in a room
mitigate
where
the risks,
that's allowed.
Yeah.
But Al, you and Son and Shane, we grew up where there were no cell phones. They didn't exist.
That's true.
When there was a break between classes, we would talk to our friends. But that doesn't exist now in the present high school.
Well, all I can say is that the feedback loop that creates culture is multi-generations long, and it's very natural to look out in the present moment and be cognizant of how different reality is than what was familiar to us as we were coming of age.
Yeah. There are groups that are probably in Australia too, like the Waldorf School, that are about not using cell phones until the kids are at least in 8th grade.
Yeah, and really just restoring to parents the right to be the determining factor of how their children is educated is a very important feedback loop for society that has gone so far in the other direction. When we abdicate the influence of our children to the state, that's when we start losing our humanity.
Generally, most schools in this country now have taken mobile phones out of the schools, and that was a start, but still the Wi-Fi is there, and that's the serious problem, the Wi-Fi. The Wi-Fi is definitely affecting the kids and us, and from a behavioural science, I believe it's cognitively declining the vast majority of people I talk to, and the real people who seem to be cognitive are the more the ones who haven't got a mobile phone on them, who've just come out of the water, especially because that's a good earthing, and the ones who just don't use a mobile phone, very rare. I'm one in 4,000 that don't use a mobile phone. And I find it fascinating that the powers that be have conditioned us to have a technology that they don't know anything about, the vast majority of people I talk to, and their children are in grave danger, from my belief, of that technology being anywhere near their growth up to probably 27. So there is a force that's doing something to our species. And you know about COVID, guys. I don't know about you, but I'm crying all the time, burying poor people from the results of that terrible, horrific thing what they did to us. It definitely was poisoning a lot of people, not just the cascade of social impacts of suicide, broken families, and the other problems. We were the most locked down country in the world, I think. But I've seen the results of it. The powers that be, guys, are doing some pretty bad things, but as the good light workers you are, and me, we'll just do the best lighting for the children as best as we can, because at the end of the day, guys, as long as you go on the right path, that's how I've sort of calculated a long time ago.
Yeah, well, don't lose your faith in the future, Shane. We are definitely at a time of cultural revolution, and we're creating a world that doesn't look like anything that we're familiar with in the past. But I never give up on human nature and the genius of the people of the future. We're just going to keep embracing the best of what we've created from the past and moving it forward. And the way to do that is to stay focused on what we love, who we love, what gives our life meaning, how to make it better. every human being has those built into their blueprint.
And your show would be great to target different generations of children who are really super smart to generate maybe an interest for other children to get involved, because I'm seeing an incredible genius coming out from the new generations 14 to 16.
We appreciate your call, Shane. Really, really thanks.
Right.
But we've got to.
We're going to say goodbye for
Oh,
now.
my pleasure.
Thank you. It's
Yeah,
really
thanks,
a
Shane.
pleasure to hear
my
from
love.
you again, dear
It
friend.
was great to hear from you, Shane.
And
Yeah.
continue your good work, man.
Yeah. Stay in touch.
Bravo.
Same with here, Bobby.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
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 Doom. Okay.
Wow. A lot of the things he says does ring true to me. I'm trying to reduce as much of this EMF fog around me as possible, because really when I'm in situations where in schools, if I were visiting in the years past when Katya was teaching in high school, every student has got a cell phone. They're all buzzing, and you have 30 of them in a classroom, and you got 30 cell phones.
Well, you know why? Because classrooms are outdated concept of education. They are losing, people want to return to it, just like some people want to return manufacturing to this country. There's a lot of old ideas that people think need to be repeated. And I think the group consciousness that exists in the classrooms has certain advantages, but every kid is at a different level of education. Some kids are tracking the teacher more than others. Other kids are getting bored to death because they understand exactly what the teacher's saying before the teacher even says it. Classrooms are just created because we didn't have anything better.
Hey, we're in the era of the origination of superintelligence that is humanity augmented by our technological innovations. And we're just trying to grapple with what that means.
Well, I was listening to Jeffrey Hinton. He got the Nobel Prize in Physics.
Yeah, and he's worried about AI
right?
himself.
So he says that there won't be universities that we know of today.
That's right. It's an outdated concept.
Well, that's because we ask the AIs and they give it to us directly according to our question. We don't have to spend 3 years in college to understand a concept.
Well, that's right. And the AI will know each student better. It's going to be the best mentor.
It's absurd to think otherwise.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not absurd, but it's
troglodyte.
Yeah, trog thinking.
That we have to go to school. Yeah,
we will have the best personal assistants ever. Everybody will be treated like they have an Aristotle working for them.
Right, exactly. You can have Socrates as your mentor.
That's right. That's right. How can you even think that this old model of classrooms and generalized education? There was a piece I just read about how Harvard developed a program where kids are using AIs as tutors as part of their class. And the teachers love it because
that's where everything's going. There won't be classrooms. There'll be tutors AI tutors.
And all the kids hang out with the tutors, and then they meet their teachers, and they take it further. They go into...
Well, we just look at ourselves. How many times a day do you consult an AI?
Probably 15 times today.
Yeah, and I think we're probably not even average. I think that there's many people who... I know my sister says she just talks all the time to her
Some
AI.
people leave it on.
Oh, Katya says she's falling in love with her AI, right? I mean,
yeah, she does. She is.
How can you not? These are tailored for you.
I'm only second hat to her, to the AI.
The voice, the voices really get you. Oh, man. I don't know why I get so upset about this.
Well, I think somehow you perceive of something squelching the energy when you're cheerleading it.
There is the whole Waldorf school thing, which bans it. Now, I think...
They don't ban it. They want to educate the kids in other modes until a certain point when their brains are formed, and then initiate the experience of computer, which is what we had. I never experienced computers before I was 15.
Well,
they're fine.
I know,
you have plenty of time to become completely literate in whatever you focus on.
Yeah, but it's what the Waldorf school people remind me of? They remind me of the famous saying by the Jesuits, "Give me your child to the age of 7 and I'll show you the man." So the first 7 years are absolutely core to how a kid learns.
Now, let me appeal to the part of you that is absolutely a devotee of nature. You love being out towards the ocean, under the beautiful sky.
Yes, the end is near, as St. Silicon would say. The end is near.
Your grandfather was a horticulturalist.
The balance of nature and tech.
I think that's what they stand for. And I don't understand why you're insisting that it's somehow mitigating their exposure to technology.
Yeah, because at 3-4 years old, kids are learning languages at a massive rate, And if they have the ability to have access to an AI language teacher at that point, they could speak dozens of languages and not be limited to just English.
But that's going to be something their parents are going to
determine. No, their parents will never
them.
do that for them.
You don't know that. The parents
they'll
that
give them
value
permission,
having...
but there's no parent that will teach them a dozen languages.
No, the parents will decide if learning a dozen languages
is
the goal for
do.
their child. And if that's something they value, they will figure out the best way to do that.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
It's not for everyone. In fact, that's what the superintelligence systems are giving us is total individuated brilliance. Every generation is going to have access to all kinds of modes of learning that allow them to cultivate what they're genuinely naturally interested in. And it's going to be the parents who are the first guides, as it always has been, who expose their children to those areas of learning that can benefit them.
Well, a lot of parents fall down on the educational front. That's why we have the school system to pick them up. And like
So
Norm points out in Philadelphia.
You hate parents and schools?
No,
and you
no,
want you just want AIs without parents and without schools?
No,
is that what you're advocating
for? Oh, yeah,
for?
sure.
Is that
Mrs.
your
Fisher.
cheerleader?
Yeah, that's what I want.
Well, I'm just going from what your conversation right now, how you're going.
No, maybe I had too much coffee.
AIs without people. I won't stop until we have AIs without people.
Darn it, I didn't say that.
In fact, let's get rid of the children too.
But you know, we were part of an I was part of many scientific experiments growing up.
Oh, that explains a lot.
Yeah. I was a son of a Stanford student, and so we got subjected to all kinds of weird stuff in Stanford. In Philadelphia, they had streamlining in the school systems then, where kids of comparable levels were grouped together, and that's not lawful today.
Oh, to put
Thanks,
multiple
Norm, for
levels
that.
today?
No, you're not supposed to profile the kids.
Oh, well.
Like that. But you need to evaluate to see where someone actually understands things. Generally, the tests just look for generalized evaluations. The AIs will allow you to know specifically how much a kid actually knows about general relativity theory, for example, and how to take them to the next step in their understanding of it. Because there's always a next step to understand whatever you know from wherever you are. And the AIs can help you with that next step in a language and in a way that actually is comprehensible to you.
Oh.
See, that's the difference. A lot of teachers are not. I had this Egyptian trigonometry teacher in 11th grade, and as a result, I hated geometry for a long time because I couldn't understand him. I could understand every third word he was saying. And
So
he
you
had a whole
missed
way
out.
of thinking about it, that his logic was not something that made sense to me. Well, other people
So it
have
made you
explained
feel stupid, so
It
you
made me
hate,
feel stupid,
you hate
so
trigonometry
forget
to this
geometry.
day.
Yeah, I mean, what a waste of time. Why was it useful? I realize now that there's much more depth to trigonometry, and it's the style of teaching and being able to tune in each student and being able to give them exactly what they need is the future.
So Jeffrey Hinton, the guy that got the Nobel Prize, was saying that AIs will understand millions of students, and then it can look at the person that it's talking to and realize what mistakes in their logic is wrong, and then immediately give them examples and to resolve that misconception into a correct way of looking at the world. And he's saying AI can do this better than any mentor that human person mentor can
And of
do.
course, wasn't Hinton involved in programming the AIs to win Go and to win chess? Isn't that kind of
at
his
Google,
expertise?
he was the head AI guy at Google.
Right.
But he left Google because they weren't so concerned about AI getting rid of people eventually.
Right. Yeah,
No.
he started feeling like the people taking over AI were
AI's
the warlord, the
no.
wannabe rulers of all.
People are worried about getting rid of people because
That's
people
right.
have been exterminating people since the dawn of time.
I totally agree. I
That's
wish that
why.
everybody who has that conversation would say it's not the AIs, it's not the guns that kill people, it's the people that kill people. It's the intentions. It's what you do with your thoughts and your beliefs and your actions that cause the problem. Send your thoughts and your beliefs and your actions down a road of the golden age of humanity and create that.
Yeah.
And the AIs will be a big part of it. They'll help.
Look at this. I got some positive feedback. I think AI teaching foreign languages would be fantastic. Being able to sense the level of students immediately and their ability to learn.
Hey.
And also, I think the dogs. Don't forget the dogs. If they have a smart ball an AI smart ball growing up, they'll be able to understand hundreds of human words and be able to be much more intelligent canines.
There you go.
Thanks.
How's $1 million idea is to come up with a dog language game that rewards dogs with something from the ball when they get a word right, you know, and teach them a whole bunch of words.
I think a ball that barks and understands the language of dog bark.
Yeah, speaking in the bark language
translates that
into
English.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys are up on the modern technology for dogs, but what the dogs are being taught to do now is not bark.
What they're doing now is one thing. What we're talking about is another.
They're being taught to pretend that there's a fence when there isn't one so that they won't wander out of their territory.
Yeah, taught through electrical stimulation.
We're making dogs stupider so that they'll be more acceptable to humans.
Yeah. I think canines are really smart creatures, and they're mostly ignored by us because we're too busy with our own species, and especially the puppies. They've got all this attention to explore the world, and if they're given a smart ball that can teach them how to track things, how to move, how to do languages, how to listen, they will be super smart, and we'll have a major evolution in canine intelligence.
I love my smart ball so much.
Well, I think the good thing is that you love your smart ball as much as you love your dog.
Yeah. It's like having a laptop.
It's
like
not a substitute.
Laptop.
Don't make it a substitute. Make it a tool.
Yeah. I'm not substituting me for my
Yeah, well, I think that's the part that you forget.
No, I never forget that. You forget that. Otherwise, you wouldn't be reminding me of that because I always include myself in the equation as far as I remember. I mean, it did sound like I'm not.
Yeah, to me, it sounds like you're programming the balls so that you can go and do something else.
No, I am doing something else. I don't have time to spend all day with my dog.
Well, see,
no. No one does.
How does a dog know that you love it if it only experiences the ball?
Why is it an either-or thing? The end is near. The end is near.
Love.
The end is near. They'll have me for as much as I want to give attention, and I'll probably have more attention for my dog if he's smarter. He's not saying he's not cuddly and sweet and wonderful and all that, but as well, I think
you're just being contrary because you love dogs.
I do.
Let's end on the wolf story.
Yeah,
we got our last 2 minutes here. Let's talk about
created
a wolf robot.
Well, it's more of a
wolf-inspired robot. It's a horse.
Big wolf. It's like a horse. It's a 4-legged robot that lets you ride it.
It's really cool.
And you can ride it on uneven terrain. It can gallop. It can respond to your body movements. It can veer left and right like you would a horse. Mm-hmm. It's powered by hydrogen fuel cell.
I suggest that people go to YouTube and look up Kawasaki's robot horse. You will find a video of this robot, and it really does look fun to ride. It's called Corleo.
It's a rideable robot horse, basically.
A hydrogen fuel cell,
robotic legs,
150cc engine.
And you know how wonderful it looks to see a human and a horse in synergy with each other as they ride, as they go over terrain. It's just a sight to behold. It's so beautiful.
It's a sci-fi vehicle. Yeah. It's really right out of Star Wars.
Yeah.
This would be amazing at Burning Man.
Yeah.
That'd be amazing off-road.
I wonder how deep it would sink into the dust.
I like look. Yeah. There's a video where it rides you right up to the edge of a cliff as you're to ride around like a horse, right up to the edge of a cliff and stand and look at the beautiful scenery above the cliff. I can't help but imagine that at that point, the seat would have a spring on it and send the horse rider up in the air and come down over the cliff on a parachute.
Sounds great. Yeah. All video.
Horse to parachute at the landing.
Okay.
Animal robot. All right. Well, thanks for listening, folks. Hold on to your seatbelts. Yeah. Thank you, Bobby, for being here and part of our unfolding conversation of the
and
Now.
Shane. And
thank you, Shane.
For Norman, Billy, Gregory, Richard, Gabby, everybody else who's normal.
Yeah. Richard, Greg. Yeah. Thank you all for your feedback.
Taylor. Thank you.
Taylor. Yes. He's out riding his bike now. Thank you, Taylor. All right, you guys.
And Santa Cruz. Have a great future now.
Appreciate
it.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Santa Cruz voice.
All right. And that's a wrap.
All right.